Welcome back, you filthy exiles. So obviously we're about 4 or 5 days away from the new league start, and I thought to myself, well, regardless of patch notes being out or not, because let's be honest, that really doesn't make any difference. Everyone still played Blade Vortex last league, everyone still played Blade Blast and Blade Fall. Everyone still played pretty much the same meta builds, including Carrion Golems, which are supposed to be nerfed last league, still ended up being one of the most played builds because it's still powerful, and there's a lesson to be learnt from that. And that's that regardless of the patch notes, builds that are good are generally going to be good regardless. So anyway, let's get into this 5 solid builds to get you started for 3.14. I decided to put this video a little bit earlier this league just to get you started, and by no means is this an exhaustive list, but these are some suggestions that both myself and the curators that the creators that I've picked out have put together solid build guides on, and also provide enough information for you to be able to work from a starting base. Now, some of these POBs, and I'll just address this from comments I've seen in the past, yes, they will have endgame gear. That's essentially how build guides will work. And yeah, so anyway, let's get into the video and start with number 1. Okay, so the first build that we're going to have a look at is actually the Vortex Occultist. Now, the reason why I've picked this one, and you'll actually see on my channel, I have a test build of this as well, where essentially it's extremely powerful. But what makes this a extremely good build, and in particular the one that Play Like Jay has put together, is that he's actually done it without using cluster jewels, which is a huge cost saver at the start of a league, and also the items that he's used are relatively obtainable, be it some of them require a little bit of crafting nous, but nothing is so unachievable that you can't do it in league start. Now, the way that essentially Vortex works is you map it to your move button, so that'll be your left click button, and then as you walk around, it'll kill everything. Now, the other thing that you have an advantage on with the Witch in particular is that you can take advantage of Profane Bloom, which means that any hexed enemies will essentially explode, which means you don't need to have an explodey chest, and you can do this from, pretty much a league start build throughout. It's extremely powerful in taking down early maps, and this build in particular would utilize Dot, and that's also incredibly powerful as a league starter component when taking down bosses, as you can see here. Now, this variation isn't the most powerful iteration that you can run for Vortex. It's also not the most tanky, but it is extremely tanky, and you'll probably find that you won't die, be it that often. Once you get to the end game, you're going to be able to sustain. As you can see, he's just taking down Minotaur. As a first build to suggest, and also as a test build that I did run, extremely good at farming maps, extremely good at scaling, and not a lot of effort, and also very simple to gear up as well. So this would be my first build that I would recommend for the 3.14 league. Alright, so the next build that I'm going to recommend is going to be the Blade Blast, Blade Fall Inquisitor. In particular, this one is Big Duck's build. Now, there's a bit of a reservation sometimes for this 1-2 punch build style, where essentially it's like cast your Blade Fall, then drop your Blade Blast. Now, you can set this up in Spellslinger variations, but as it stands, it's not necessarily a bad mechanic. It is very powerful though, and I don't believe that they will ever be able to nerf this enough to make it not powerful. In particular, the changes to the Inquisitor Ascendancy last league just amped this up to a whole different level. Now, on top of that, the Inquisitor is incredibly tanky, and when you pair it with, and I'll just refer to here, the Glorious Vanity Timeless Jewel, it's basically a walking meat bag, and how this works is essentially 50% of your damage is split between Energy Shield and Life. So basically you can double stack and have multiple ways of taking damage and multiple layers of damage or defense. Now, Big Duck's build in particular, while his builds are very down to earth, and that's why I generally feature at least one of his builds in every curation video I do, he's also provided a comprehensive tree that gives you a breakdown from level 1 to 35, 36 to 55, so on and so on, and to the point where you get to the the most expensive items in the game. Now, in particular, I might actually run a similar style build to this, not this exact build, because I'll variate this build myself. But as an overall, this is a generally reliable build to go with. Now, I did test build this on my Armageddon style brand character at one point, using the Martyr of Innocence, and even with that stave, which isn't a targeted item for this type of build, Blade Blast is just on a league of its own. So this is definitely one that I'll recommend as a second build to look at if you're keen for a solid league starter. That'll get you kicking into the league. Okay, so Carrion Golems. This is a bit of a contentious one every league, but I've actually done my own sort of build guide or build update video for this one because I did one in 3.13. Now, without going into great amounts of detail, if you're playing this as a league starter, essentially all you need to do is get your hands on 2 clay shapers, and that gets you started throughout the process. Now, you will generally find that you'll play this as an aura stacking build, which will mean that you'll obviously need a Prism Guardian, a Shavs, and all that sort of stuff. And in the video that I've provided, you'll be able to get a bit of a breakdown so you can use a Solaris Lorica as an early 6-link to get that started. But as an overall, this is an incredibly powerful build. What you're going to be doing is you're just going to be getting up to, I think that max you need to get to is about 4 golems in the end. Now you can use cold iron points to buff up your golems as well, or at least the melee abilities around them, which is a huge advantage. What I did is used a cold iron point in my end build with a Prism Guardian, and then basically just have a really good animated Guardian set up, and then buff your allies with Spectres, Carnage Chieftains, Host Chieftains, and whatnot. All of this can be done very easily, and the most amount of investment and time that you're going to spend is actually getting your cluster jewels, which you can self-craft in most circumstances to buff up your auras even further, to basically make you a 3000 ES generating meat bag of hate. Now, is this build good? Yes. Is it a league start build? Yes, you can play it as a league start. In fact, I have a few friends that do play it as a league start. Now, I'm going to mention Von Vikton's build, just to be objective. I'll provide his tree as well in the POB. You can check out his video and his walkthrough. Alternatively, there's also my video around this from last league. As it stands, that is still relevant for this league. Now, do I expect this to get nerfed with patch notes? Well, considering they hit this with a nerf last league, they hit it with a nerf the league before, and they hit it with a nerf the league before, and it's still, you know, in the top 5 to 13% of builds played every single league, I would say no, I don't think they're ever going to be able to nerf this enough. In fact, my build was essentially got to the point where it was unkillable and I wasn't using a single mirror tier item. So from a league starter perspective, very solid build, very reliable, tried and true, tons of POBs, tons of videos to look up. Use the 2 that I'm going to provide as a baseline, and then from there, I guess, do what you wish with it and make it cool and awesome and give it your own flavor. So, build number 4 is actually one of my builds, and I wasn't until I started putting this video together that I realized how long I've actually been doing this now and how many build guides I've actually uploaded in just, you know, a bit over a year. So in this case, it's my Phantasm Soulwrest Necromancer. Now, from a league starting perspective, this is just an unbelievably strong build. It only requires Soulwrest staff. You only need to put 6 sockets in it, so it doesn't really require a 6-link setup at all unless you're talking about buffing up other minions and things like that. I think even in my final build that I put up, when I have a look at it, the 6-link was in the chest, and you don't really need a 6-link. You can do it with a 4-link to set up the Cyclone setup. But basically, this in relation to bossing was unbelievably powerful. Now, my build will show you a tree that only has 1 set of cluster jewels in it. It's relatively straightforward. While I don't talk about the methodology of setting it up, your real focus is going to be essentially just getting those early items. Now, my tree in particular used the Stampede, and yeah, it was a straight up really easy build to work with at league start. From the get-go, throughout leveling up, how I did this initially was to basically run skeletons and specters and zombies, and then once you get to the point where you get your Soulwrest, and that'll happen within either the first 1 or 2 days, or you might be able to get it on league, then you're pretty much good to go, and you can play Phantasms from that point. Now, from the jewels that I used, or the gems that I used, that maximized damage, and this was taking down A9 Cyruses without any problems. It was only running 4k HP because it has a lot of damage layering as well. But anyway, I'll put my vid in the description with the POB. Feel free to ask any questions about this build, how I got it to work, what it ended up doing. I spent a lot of time perfecting this build, especially making it a cost-effective build, because it's not expensive at all. It's very easy, very cheap, and it's a lot different to than what most other players play. And I'm pretty sure most people who played this off my build guide did pretty well with it. So anyway, that's number 4. So build 5 is actually going to be a Glacial Cascade miner. In particular, this is Esoro's build, but I've actually got a video and build guide for this from a life variant and a low life variant. Now, both of my builds extremely powerful, doing A8 Cyrus before the changes to the Atlas, but I thought I'd feature Esoro's build here because it's newer. It does a little more DPS than my build too, but regardless, it's a relatively straightforward and cheap build to run. Essentially, you know, you're going to be running shit like Bated Breath, Syntrex, Crown of the Inward Eye, Prism Guardian, and, you know, with the expensive piece being the Chevron's Wrapping that you can trade out for a Solara Lorica when you're first starting out, and then switch to a Shavs once you have the currency for it, and then running a Presence of Chayula. There's really nothing special about this build. It's going to use a wand. Mine used a dagger. You can go either way, and then basically you're just going to be buffing up auras like Zealotry and whatnot to and Hatred to get the damage that you're after. And as you can see on screen, it just obliterates bosses, and that was my experience with the build, running at low cost. Now there is a health version that you can run with Tremor Rod, but you know, it's really up to you. If you want to play life or low life, my recommendation would be to play low life builds, and that's what I'm going to suggest here with this curation. But his guide itself has, you know, enough meat on the bone to be able to really build it. If you follow his tree, it's a very simple and straightforward tree. Nothing very, very difficult at all. Now, the other thing too is this got nerfed last league, and it's still this powerful, so I don't expect this to cop a huge nerf hammer hit. But, you know, that could always happen. We haven't got the patch notes yet, but I'm pretty confident in this build's ability to sustain moving forwards. So I hope this video gives you at least 5 league starter ideas to get you cracking, doing some research, and pulling in POBs. I'll provide all the POBs and links to the creator videos in the description, as I always do. If you've got any comments around questions or anything like that, feel free to hit me up. Feel free to like and sub to the channel as well. Always appreciated. Really want to get to that 10,000 subs this year. I don't know, it's just a goal of mine that I've always set out to do. But yeah, until next time, like and sub, and have a good one. Enjoy the 3.14 league, and get excited for next weekend. And bye.